I never want it to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have. I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats. And I can only hope that despite my flaws and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Ever since the first whispers broke that Rachel Zegler had been chosen to play Disney's iconic princess, the internet buzzed with excitement. A young breakout star, fresh off a critically acclaimed performance, stepping into the role that launched the Disney empire so many decades ago, on paper, it sounded perfect. Fans wanted to believe she could capture that old-world innocence while injecting modern charm into a classic. Industry insiders whispered that her casting was a statement. Disney was ready for a new generation of princess, led by someone who had dazzled critics with her natural talent and magnetic presence on screen. It felt like a moment of torch passing, the type of opportunity that rarely comes more than once in a rising star's career. The day the announcement hit entertainment news websites, social media platforms erupted in celebration. People saw it as a courageous move by Disney, one that might usher in a whole new era of inclusive storytelling. And at the center of it all was Rachel, beaming, confident, and seemingly on the verge of a transformation into the next unstoppable force in Hollywood. Yet underneath that early wave of anticipation, a smaller tide of dissent began forming. Some fans were wary, not of Rachel herself, but of how this beloved, nearly century-old story would be adapted. Was Disney going to stay faithful to the fairy tale charm, or would there be a more radical reimagining that strayed too far from cherished memories? A few dedicated purists poked around Rachel's past interviews to see what kind of perspective she might bring. The general consensus? She seemed passionate and committed to doing justice to the role. No one was predicting chaos just yet. Fact, the official press releases, sprinkled with quotes about a bold new direction and honoring the legacy of the original, sounded like the perfect balance. For a time, it looked as if this adaptation would be a surefire success, propelled by the promise of a rising star and the timeless appeal of Disney's first princess. But cracks started showing when interview snippets emerged from early press, meetings, and casual Q&A sessions. Rachel spoke candidly about her views on the original 1937 film, calling it weird in places and even creepy in others. She chuckled about how the prince seemed like a random guy following Snow White around. While some fans appreciated a fresh viewpoint, many longtime Disney enthusiasts felt uneasy, as though an outsider was mocking the very cornerstone of Disney's classic era. Social media, always ready to seize on strong reactions, captured these comments in short clips and turned them into meme fodder. Suddenly, the mood shifted. That initial excitement started to erode under a creeping suspicion that Rachel might not actually respect the magic embedded in the story she was set to lead. Signs of trouble also began to surface from behind closed doors. A few less savory rumors floated around. Rumors of on-set tension and disagreements over how the character should be portrayed. Some insiders implied that the creative team felt torn between Rachel's desire for a more radically independent Snow White and the studio's concern about alienating families who wanted something closer to the original. These stories were largely unconfirmed, but that didn't stop them from running rampant across message boards and trending hashtags. Fans picked apart every detail. Did it look like Rachel was avoiding eye contact with a certain co-star in that behind-the-scenes snapshot? Why did her posts on social media carry an undercurrent of exasperation, as though she was fed up with defending the new direction? Although these murmurs of drama brewed in the background, the general public still expected the film to be a spectacle. After all, Disney live-action reimaginings have a consistent track record of drawing audiences. Love them or hate them, they usually rake in huge numbers. The question was never if Snow White would be a box office success, but rather how colossal that success might be. Disney's marketing team threw its weight behind a global promotion strategy, featuring glamorous photo shoots, appearances at fan conventions, and carefully orchestrated sneak peeks. Rachel, for her part, seemed determined to deliver a contemporary princess who wasn't just waiting to be rescued by romance. She teased new storylines focusing on Snow White's personal growth and leadership qualities, a shift she believed was essential to keep the tale relevant for modern viewers. As the official press tour kicked off, tension that had been simmering finally reached boiling point. In multiple interviews, Rachel doubled down on her critique of the original film. She pointed out how Snow White in 1937 seemed far too passive, relying on a prince who just materialized. She even went so far as to label the original romance as borderline stalker behavior, throwing around language that stung those who held the 1930s classic in high regard. These interviews rapidly gained traction online, with countless TikTok stitches dissecting her remarks. The more she insisted the old version was outdated, the more defensive, die-hard Disney loyalists became. And it wasn't limited to older fans. Some younger viewers who had grown up cherishing the original soundtrack and whimsical style felt equally unsettled, believing that you could modernize a narrative without trashing the source material so overtly. The social media storm proved relentless. A cluster of well-edited reaction videos on TikTok and YouTube circulated clips of Rachel's statements next to moments from the 1937 film, creating an uncomfortable comparison that painted her as mocking the classic. Certain hashtags like #SharkSnowFlop began to trend. At first, they were used ironically or in jest, but it didn't take long for a wave of negativity to follow. In a matter of days, entire threads on X, formerly Twitter, were dedicated to condemning her entitlement, disrespect, and arrogance. People cited older interviews where she spoke about deserving proper compensation for streaming hours spent in costume, as though that was proof she harbored an inflated sense of self. Others dug up any snippet they could find that reinforced the impression she considered herself above the role. Still, a small circle of her supporters tried to push back. They argued that re-examining old fairy tales through a modern lens is both healthy and necessary. They insisted that calling out antiquated tropes was not disrespectful, but progressive. Yet those voices were drowned out as the avalanche of memes, jokes, and critical commentaries kept piling up. The new narrative emerging online was that Rachel didn't just have opinions, she was actively spurning the beloved legacy that paved the way for her big break. And in the vast echo chamber of social media, outrage often rises faster than reasoned discourse. The temperature skyrocketed. People began looking for more reasons to tear down what they perceived as an ungrateful star. The entire situation turned into a feeding frenzy, with each new interview or post from Rachel fanning the flames. By the time the film finally hit theaters, the negative chatter was at a fever pitch. Box office analysts were keeping an eye on the advanced ticket sales, which appeared anemic compared to Disney's usual gold standard. Then, the real bombshell. The opening weekend numbers came in at a mere $45 million domestically. For a Disney remake, especially one carrying the historic weight of Snow White, that total was catastrophic. Just months earlier, The Little Mermaid had faced its own fair share of debate and controversy, but still managed to pull in double that amount upon release. Suddenly, articles and opinion pieces declared that Disney had suffered one of its largest miscalculations in recent history. The cultural significance of Snow White, combined with a half-hearted marketing pivot that tried to salvage a tarnished star, produced a perfect storm for a shocking flop. Industry experts and fans alike scrambled to interpret what precisely had gone wrong. Some pinned the blame on misguided marketing, suggesting Disney had banked too heavily on a single star's appeal while neglecting to address concerns about how the story itself was being reshaped. Others insisted that all the hostility aimed at Rachel Zegler was unfair, that the real problem lay in how the new script jettisoned the classic's romantic heartbeat in favor of something that felt hollow and preachy. But no matter how critics tried to piece it together, one truth was unavoidable. The film wasn't just underperforming, it was tanking. Theaters across the country began removing it from their largest screens after its second week, sliding it into less sought-after time slots and focusing on other films that brought in more reliable revenue. While the numerical fallout was staggering, it was the personal toll on Rachel that everyone had their eyes on. She had stepped into the role expecting to redefine what a Disney princess could be. Instead, she found herself at the epicenter of an unrelenting social media hurricane, with each negative review and underwhelming box office figure amplifying the intensity. And that was only half of it. In the midst of this chaos came the Oscars night, an evening that was supposed to serve as a triumphant red carpet moment. Rachel, scheduled to present an award alongside her co-star Gal Gadot, arrived decked in couture, looking poised to charm. But from the moment the cameras flashed, onlookers noticed something was off. Gal Gadot seemed almost distant, going through the motions of promotional duties without the usual warmth or camaraderie one might expect between co-stars. Observers picked up on stiff body language, quick side glances, and a palpable tension that the cameras failed to disguise. When the two took the stage to present, their scripted banter fell flat. as if each was eager to be anywhere else. Rumors quickly sprouted that Gal felt exasperated by the swirl of negativity overshadowing the film. Some believed she had quietly tried to distance herself from Rachel as the backlash mounted, focusing on her own image and career trajectory. Images from that night spread like wildfire on social media, accompanied by a flurry of commentary. People pointed out how Gal's posture suggested discomfort. No arm linking, no shared jokes, no easy smiles. Body language analysts chimed in, noting the subtle ways Gal angled away from Rachel, as though refusing to be pulled into the vortex of scandal. For Rachel, the Oscars spotlight should have been a chance to demonstrate resilience, to pivot public opinion, or at least steer the conversation towards something celebratory. Instead, it painted an even more dire picture, that she was alone in this PR disaster, with no major allies rushing to her defense. Afterward, in entertainment gossip circles, insiders let slip that the studio's executives were deeply concerned about the lasting effects of this box office letdown and the star's diminishing favor. While Gal Gadot continued to book new roles and maintain a pristine public image, Rachel found herself portrayed as the emblem of everything that had gone wrong, someone who had ridiculed a classic story and now faced the consequences. As the chatter grew, it became clear that Hollywood was beginning to second-guess her viability as a leading lady. Brands that might have collaborated with her on marketing tie-ins shied away, not wanting to be entangled in controversy. Casting directors, aware that audience perception can quickly kill a film's prospects, reportedly tabled any big offers. The star, once hailed as the bright young face of a new Disney era, was now burdened by a harsh label, the one who let the E crown slip through her fingers. That alone would be painful for any performer. But with Rachel's defiance still fresh in people's minds, the negative momentum fed on itself. Everywhere she turned, another clip from an earlier interview would resurface, taken out of context or not, and plastered across YouTube and TikTok to keep the narrative rolling. There was the time she'd rolled her eyes describing the original Snow White's romance, the time she joked about the prince being a borderline stalker, the time she talked about her pay expectations in a way that came across as pompous to many. Rather than offering a measured, humble apology, she continued standing by her statements, fueling the impression that she was looking down on the source material and the fans who loved it. In the court of public opinion, that resolute stance became the biggest sin of all. For now, the question that echoes after the credits roll is simple yet profound. Was this all a tragic mistake, or a catalyst for the kind of growth that shapes true legends? Only time will tell. Until Snow White's cautionary message rings out, reminding anyone who takes on a beloved story that reverence isn't just an option, it's the price of admission into people's hearts. And once that faith is broken, regaining it can be a steeper climb than any fairy tale princess has ever faced. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more stories like this.